Before the story begins, I ask just one thing. Like this video, subscribe if you enjoy unsettling tales, and share in the comments where you're watching from and what time. It's how YouTube knows this story found the right person. Now, shall we begin? My name is Elias Crowe. I'm 52 years old, and I have worked at Blackwater & Sons Funeral Home in the hills of Pennsylvania for 26 years. This morning, at exactly 2:37 a.m., a knock echoed from Cold Room B. Not once, not twice, but 3 deliberate knocks evenly spaced, sharp, resonant. The kind of knock that carries through bone. I was alone. The only other person in the building had clocked out at midnight, and Cold Room B has not been used for over a decade. That room, that specific freezer room, holds nothing now but rusted shelves, a cracked floor drain, and one sealed box. A box I swore never to touch again. Box 731. It was not supposed to be there. I saw it last in the archive manifest from 12 years ago. Marked destroyed by order county office. And yet, here it was squatting silently in the corner like it had never left. Faint frost clinging to the edges. The barcode label still intact but dulled with time. BX 731. Return to sender. No name. No origin. No next of kin. I stood in the doorway, holding my breath. The long fluorescent light above flickering like a failing nerve. The chill in that room was always unnatural, but tonight it felt expectant, like something was listening. I wanted to close the door. I should have walked away, but something stopped me, not fear, not curiosity. It was obligation. You see, morticians do not fear the dead. We respect them. We owe them. And I owed Box 731 more than I wanted to admit. The rest of the night I spent at my desk, watching the camera feed. Blackwater's surveillance system is old, monochrome, and lags when the motion sensor is triggered too fast. But sometime around 4:15 a.m., the cold room feed glitched, only for a few seconds. When it resumed, Box 731 had moved. Just a little no more than 4 inches forward. Enough to show drag marks in the condensation on the floor. But no one had entered the room. Not me. Not anyone. At 6 o'clock, just as the sun began bleeding through the stained glass of the lobby chapel, I made my way upstairs. We keep our record ledgers in the attic handwritten. By tradition. Every mortician since Silas Blackwater himself has signed the death records here. Page by page. Ink on, skin of the truth. When I opened volume 39, I almost dropped it. The last name, written in ink so fresh it had not dried, was my own. Crowe. Elias J. Date of death. Tuesday, February 27. Time, 2:37 a.m. Exactly when the knocking began, and beneath that, scrawled in lighter pressure, barely legible unless the light hit it just right, or Abigail. Abigail is my daughter, 24 years old. She works nights as a forensic pathology assistant across the county. She was supposed to be off duty today, supposed to be safe. Now, I am not so sure, because this ledger, it does not lie. In 26 years, I have never once seen it record a name incorrectly, and I have never, ever seen it write a name by itself. Until now, there is a difference between burying the dead and burying the truth. Most people do not see that difference, but morticians do. We see it every day. It is there in the way a family asks for a closed casket, in the quiet hesitation before signing a cremation form, in the way someone grips a prayer card a little too tightly, like they are trying to squeeze guilt out of paper. But me, I did more than see it. I helped it. Once. One time, I wrote a lie on a death certificate. And that is why Box 731 came back. It was 14 years ago. Winter had come early that year. Everything in Blackwater Hollow was buried in snow by the second week of November. And with it came a girl named Lina Morales, 17 years old, found dead in her bedroom. Cardiac arrest, or so the paramedics said. There was no foul play, no drugs, no bruises, just a cold, pale girl with eyes still open, frozen mid-blink. Her mother, Isabel Morales, was devastated. She came into my office wrapped in a patchwork coat, still dusted with snow. She spoke with a trembling voice, her hands chapped and bleeding from shoveling a path through the storm to reach us. "I do not have money for an autopsy," she said. "I just want to bury her. Please, let her rest. I should have followed protocol. The county requires an autopsy for all deaths under the age of 21 without known cause." But I looked at Isabel, at her hollow cheeks, at her cracked lips, and I nodded. I told her we would make an exception. I changed the death certificate, listed the cause as undiagnosed congenital heart failure, signed it myself, filed it quietly. No one questioned it. We embalmed Lina, dressed her in a lilac dress, and laid her to rest in Plot 48. She looked at peace. Too much peace. Maybe, like something had left her too quickly, or had not left at all. 2 weeks later, the county coroner called. Someone had reported an inconsistency in Lina's medical records. No heart condition. No family history. He asked for the autopsy file. I told him it was waived due to familial consent. He sounded annoyed, but not suspicious. It might have ended there, if not for the fire. On December 4th, Isabel Morales' house burned down. Neighbors said they saw her on the porch screaming into the night, calling a name over and over again. Not Lina. Elias. My name. She died in that fire. No one ever found out how it started, but the rumors spread like smoke that I had helped her fake her daughter's cause of death, and that whatever was in that house had followed her home from the funeral. I denied it. Of course, there were no charges. But something shifted in me after that. A crack I could not mend with formaldehyde. The next week, I opened Cold Room B to store overflow from another case. And there it was, Box 731. No manifest. No origin. No signature. Just a shipping label. Return to sender. I locked that room the same night. Called it non-operational. Told my assistants we were decommissioning it. No one asked questions. People trust morticians. Too much. Sometimes. For 14 years. That box stayed there. Untouched. Silent. Until this morning. I now believe Box 731 does not carry bodies. It carries consequences. It is not a coffin. It is a contract. And I signed mine the day I wrote that lie. Tonight. I called the county archives to request a copy of Lina Morales' certificate. They told me it was already requested. Yesterday. By a woman named Ruth Delgado County Medical Examiner. But here's the thing. Ruth died last year. Massive stroke. I went to her funeral. I dressed her body myself. I did not sleep that day. Instead, I sat in my office with the ledger open in front of me, staring at my own name like it was carved on a headstone. Crowe, Elias J. Date of death, Tuesday, February 27. Time, 2:37 a.m. I ran my fingers over the ink, still faintly damp, as though it had been written only minutes ago. I turned the page, blank, but not empty. There was an indentation on the next sheet, the ghost of a sentence pressed into paper, visible only if you tilted it just right against the light. I held the page beneath the gooseneck lamp, and there it was, faint but unmistakable. Or Abigail. My daughter had nothing to do with this. Abigail was just a student when I made the mistake with Lena Morales. She had only started working nights at the county forensics office this year. Brilliant, methodical, skeptical of anything that could not be dissected and labeled. She did not believe in hauntings. She believed in evidence, data, trace elements, thermal patterns. If I told her a coffin had moved by itself and a ledger had written my name, she would ask what medication I had missed. Still, I called her. 7 o'clock sharp. She answered after 2 rings, her voice bright, too bright for someone who just pulled an overnight shift. "Dad, what's up? I need to talk to you about something. Something important." A pause. "Are you okay?" I looked at the ledger again. The name. The time. The date. "No, but I do not want to say this over the phone. Can you come to the funeral home?" She hesitated. "I just got home. Can it wait until tonight?" "No." Another pause. "I will be there in 15 kia." She arrived wearing her lab coat over jeans. Hair tied back in a hasty bun. Still had her name badge clipped to the collar. Elias Crowe, forensic intern. She hugged me, briefly, then stepped back and looked me over. "You look like hell. Feel like it." I showed her the ledger. She flipped to the page with my name and frowned. "You wrote this?" "No. It was blank last night." "You saying this wrote itself?" "Yes." She laughed. A single, nervous puff of air. "Dad, I know how it sounds. And the or Abigail, not me." She went quiet. "Read the name again." Then again, each time slower, like repetition would prove it false. Finally, she said, "You think someone is threatening us?" "I think someone or something is warning us." We spent the next hour digging through old ledgers, volumes 35 through 38, looking for patterns. And that was when we noticed it. In every volume, starting from 31, there were pages where the ink ran slightly darker, where the strokes bent like someone had written with a shaking hand, where 1 or 2 entries appeared with no cause of death listed, no medical signature, just a name, a date, and always, a time, 2:37 a.m. Every time, one of the entries caught Abigail's eye. Delgado, Ruth A. Date of death, Thursday, June 22nd. Time, 2:37 a.m. "But that is impossible," Abigail said. "I remember her funeral. She died in the afternoon. Stroke, right? Yes. She died at 4:23 post-meridium. I saw the medical report. So did I. I prepared the body. Then why does this say otherwise?" I did not have an answer. We decided to cross-reference the names in the ledgers with the county death records. I still had access to the internal database from my licensing work. And that was when the impossible became undeniable. Of the 9 names recorded in that same style, darker ink, shaky hand, no cause of death. 3 had official times of death that did not match. The ledger always said 2:37 a.m., even if the record said otherwise. "Either this book is broken," Abigail muttered, or it is not recording the time of death." I finished. "It is telling you the time of something else." She looked up, met my eyes. The time they were chosen. Outside, wind had picked up. The old oak near the loading dock creaked against the siding. Somewhere in the back hall, a door hinge moaned open even though I knew we had locked everything. Abigail closed the ledger slowly. "Where is this box 731 now?" "In cold room B. I thought you decommissioned that room." "I did." She stared at me. "You mean it has been here all along?" "Sealed, untouched. Until last night, and it moved. Yes." She stood, crossed her arms. "You need to report this." "Dad, to who?" "The county. The department. Anyone." I shook my head. "They would not understand." "Hell, I do not understand." "Then let me help." "No." I stood too, firmer than I expected. "You stay away from that room. Do you hear me?" She looked at me like I had just struck her. "Is this about what it says in the ledger?" "Yes." "Then all the more reason I should see it." "No," I said again, louder. "Why not?" "Because if that thing came for me, it will take you instead." That night, I could not sit still. I paced the embalming room until the tile seams blurred. Ran the same corridor from my office to cold room B more times than I could count. The clock above the reception desk moved slower than molasses in January. Every tick sounded like the whisper of a shovel against dirt. Box 731 was waiting. I felt it a pull, like a gravity I could not explain, or a magnet humming beneath the floorboards. But I waited. I waited until Abigail left, made sure she was back home, made sure her car had turned the corner and vanished past the cemetery gates. Then I took the key off the hook, an old brass one labeled B3, and headed downstairs. My hand was already sweating before I reached the door. Cold room B had not changed. Same peeling paint, same flickering overhead light, same hum of refrigeration that was far too loud for a unit not in use. The temperature gauge read 39 degrees Fahrenheit, but it felt much colder. Not clinical cold, not chemical cold. This was something deeper, an old cold. Box 731 sat in the far left corner, not on a shelf on the floor. Where we never store caskets, the cardboard corners had curled with frost. A thin halo of melted condensation surrounded its base, like it had wept. I approached slowly. 3 feet, 2, 1. Then I stopped. A strip of red tape sealed the lid shut. Over it was a printed label, warped but still legible. Return to sender. Manifest. Void. Source. Unconfirmed. Destination. Unclaimed. Signature. E. Crowe in cursive. My own signature. Perfect match. Every curve, every slant unmistakably mine. But here was the thing. I had never signed this. I reached for the corner of the tape. My fingers trembled. The cold bit into my skin like metal in winter. Then something behind me clicked. A mechanical sound distinct. The door to cold room B had shut. Hard. I spun around. The latch had slid into place. I had not locked it. I moved toward the door. Tried the handle, nothing. Deb, not stuck. Sealed. From the outside, I turned back toward the box. And that is when I saw it. Tucked beneath the box, half exposed, was a manila envelope. I knelt slowly and pulled it free. It was unmarked. No postage. No return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper and a small brass key. The key was tagged Shelf 3, Cold Room B. The same shelf we used to store high-risk cases. The same shelf where Lena Morales' body had rested for a night before burial. I unfolded the paper. It was blank. Completely. Utterly blank. I tilted it toward the light. Nothing. No watermark. No invisible ink. Just clean, cold paper. Then I breathed on it, and the words began to appear. It started faint, like frost forming in reverse, letters blooming out of nothing. But what shook me was the handwriting. It was mine. Not just similar, identical. Same pressure. Same slant. Same uneven F and looped G. And at the bottom, a signature. Elias Crowe. March 20th, 2030. 5 years from now. The message read, "If you are reading this, then I failed to stop it. You have two choices. Open the box or sign the ledger again. But do not let Abigail touch it. Do not let her read what comes next. The name is not just written. It is traded." My hands went cold, not because of the temperature, but because I understood what this was. Not a warning. Not a prophecy. A message from the me that came before. Or after. A loop. A trap. The door unlocked behind me. No click. No footsteps. Just silence, then freedom. I turned back toward the box. It had moved. Not far. Just a few inches to the right. But enough for me to see a line of faint black smudge beneath it. A second set of words had appeared on the floor in Sharpie ink. "You already signed. You just have not remembered yet." I stumbled out of cold room B, heart pounding like a war drum. Dropped the envelope. Left the key behind. I did not sleep that night. I could not. Because now I knew. I had signed something. Sometime. Somewhere. And box 731 was not here to remind me. It was here to collect. I did not go back to the funeral home the next morning. I sat in my car across the street for over an hour. Engine off, watching the second-floor curtains ripple as the furnace kicked on. Everything looked normal from a distance. Ordinary. Deadly ordinary. But nothing was normal anymore. At exactly 10 o'clock m.i., I opened the side entrance and stepped inside. There was no wind, no smell, not even the lingering chill from the freezer room. Just stillness, like the whole building was holding its breath. I went straight to the back hall. Cold room B. The key still hung heavy in my coat pocket. Brass. Aged. Slightly curved from years of disuse. Tag read. Shelf 3. Cold room B. I unlocked the freezer without hesitating this time. Stepped inside. The lights did not flicker. The box had not moved, but the shelf 3 looked different. Dust-free. Wiped clean, like someone had been here already. I approached slowly. There, at the back of the shelf, something glinted under the fluorescent light. I reached in and pulled it out. It was a wedding band, worn, silver, scratched, and unmistakably mine. I had lost it 5 years ago. I remember that night. It slipped off my finger while I was cleaning out the drain in embalming room 2. I searched everywhere, even pulled apart the sink trap. Nothing. And yet, here it was, resting at the back of a shelf in a freezer I had not opened in over a decade. It did not make sense. None of this made sense. Next to the ring was a certificate, folded, water stain, sealed in plastic. I peeled it open. Certificate of death. Name: Elias J. Crowe. Date of death: February 27, 20. Time: 2:37 a.m. Unspecified. Physician's signature. Illegible. The signature line was smeared, like someone had signed with a trembling hand, or like the ink had run in water. I flipped the document over. On the back, in faded handwriting, was a note. "You must trade yourself for her, or the box will choose for you." My hands shook. I heard something behind me. A soft exhale, like breath drawn through a narrow mouth. I turned. Nothing. The box was where I left it. But in that moment, I knew with a clarity I could not explain. Box 731 had already opened once, and someone had looked inside. I checked the security footage, went upstairs to the monitors, pulled the timestamp. From 2 o'clock to 4 o'clock a.m. Footage had recorded all night. At first, nothing. The feed showed the freezer room, empty, static hum. Then, at 2:26 a.m., the feed glitched. Exactly 1 minute before the knocking had begun. When it resumed, there was a figure standing next to the box. Me. Or someone who looked exactly like me. Same build, same coat, same hands. He reached into his pocket, pulled out the brass key, bent toward the shelf, opened it, took out the ring, took out the certificate, then turned to the camera and stared, not at the lens, at me, like he knew I would be watching. And then he smiled. I scrubbed through the rest of the footage. No sign of entry, no door opening, no exit. Just that 1 minute of missing time, and a ghost with my face. I picked up the manila envelope again. The blank paper inside had faded like it had never been written on at all. I checked the inside flap. There was a second sheet, folded, and this one had writing, typed, clinical, unsent, a draft obituary. Elias James Crowe, aged 52. Passed away unexpectedly in his office at Blackwater and Sons Funeral Home in the early hours of Tuesday, February 27th. A long-standing member of the community, Elias was known for his quiet dedication to the dead and his silence about the living. He is survived by one daughter, Abigail. There was no author, no publication header. I flipped it over, handwritten in red ink. Either she writes this or you do. Choose. The weight of it hit me all at once. The ring, the certificate, the footage, the message. I was not being haunted. I was being processed, filed, stamped, indexed. This was not punishment. It was accounting. And the box, it was the final ledger. I put everything back, closed the freezer door, locked it. When I turned around, Abigail was standing at the end of the hall. She was pale, eyes wide, still in her lab coat. "How long have you known?" she whispered. My mouth went dry. "I tried to keep you out of it. You failed. Tell me everything," Abigail said. She stood at the end of the hallway like a ghost, shoulders tight, hands in the pockets of her coat, voice trembling, not from fear, but from control held too long. So I did. I told her about Box 731, about Lena Morales, about the death certificate I falsified, about the fire, about the ledger, the knocks, the ring, the copy of my obituary, the man on the camera who wore my face. When I finished, she sat on the stairwell and stared at the floor for a long time. Then she said, "So you signed someone else's name once, and now it wants yours." I nodded. "And if it cannot have yours, it will take yours instead." She leaned back against the wall. "Why would it want me?" "Because of me," I said. "Because you carry my name. Because you work in the same system. Because you are next." She looked up sharply. "I am not next. Dad, not if we stop it. You think we can? We have to." We returned to the archive room. Abigail pulled out old storage files, county orders, state disposal logs, and funeral manifests. She was fast, sharp, clinical. But the more she dug, the more frustrated she became. "There is no chain of custody for the box," she muttered. "No one signed it in. No one signed it out. It is like it appeared by protocol." I opened one of the older ledgers and flipped to the page with Pastor Henry Bell's signature. He had written hundreds of entries over his 30-year tenure, but one in particular caught my eye. Morales, Isabel. Date of death, December 4th, 2010. Time, 2:37 a.m. I tapped the page. She died in the fire, but I embalmed her in the afternoon. Not according to this, Abigail said. She reached for a separate ledger. And look here, Ruth Delgado. The examiner, who supposedly pulled Lena's file, same thing. Death recorded at 2:37 a.m. We scanned several other odd entries. Each one followed the same pattern. No known cause. Time of death, 2:37 a.m. Ledger signed, but not by a living mortician. Instead, the signatures were smudged, initials only, or simply marked void. Abigail rubbed her temples. This is a system, she whispered, a process. Like something is collecting, not just bodies, but corrections. What do you mean? She looked up. You made a mistake on paper, and that created a debt. But this thing, whatever it is, it does not punish you directly. It just forces you to balance the books. I stared at her. It is a ledger. She nodded. But not just for debt, for accountability. We found another envelope in the back of the ledger cabinet. It had no label. Inside was a Polaroid photograph, faded and yellowed. It showed an old version of Cold Room B from the 1980s, based on the equipment. In the center stood a wooden casket, sealed with wax. Behind it was a much younger Pastor Henry Bell, standing stiffly beside a coroner in a brown trench coat. Scrawled in red pen on the back, he gave up his daughter to seal it the first time. I will not make the same mistake. H. Buddy. My stomach dropped. I remembered Pastor Bell's eyes the last time I saw him. Something hollow in them. Something resigned. He had passed me a folded piece of paper after Isabel's funeral. I never opened it. I dug through my desk drawer. Still there, unopened, sealed with old wax. I peeled it open carefully. Inside was a single sentence. Do not sign anyone else's name, not even in your heart. At that moment, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. I answered. Static. Then, a voice. Old. Breathy. Familiar. You still have the pen. Elias. You know how this ends? If you do not choose, it will. The line went dead. I looked at Abigail. She was watching me. You are thinking about opening it, aren't you? I nodded. I cannot let this take you. What if that is what it wants? What if opening it makes it stronger? I hesitated. What if opening it ends the loop? She stepped closer, eyes fierce. No, you do not get to sacrifice yourself and leave me with the mess. I already wrote the lie. Abby, I already signed someone else's death. This is my debt. You do not know what is inside that box. I shook my head. No, but I know what it will take if I wait. I walked down the hallway. She followed me, silent. I unlocked Cold Room B for the last time, stepped inside. Box 731 sat in the same place, still sealed, still humming, still waiting. I placed my hand on the lid. It was warm. The seal peeled away like parchment. The red tape cracked as I lifted it, brittle with time. A hiss of cold air escaped from beneath the lid, not dry or sterile, but wet, like something had been waiting too long inside. Abigail stood in the doorway. Dad, stay there. I opened box 731. The lid creaked. It did not resist like it wanted to open, like it had been waiting for this moment. 2. Inside was not what I expected. There was no body, no bone, no weight, just a single envelope, and a face mask, not a medical one, but something older, a funerary death mask. cast in wax. The features were unmistakable. My face. I reached inside. The wax was cold but soft at the edges, like it had been handled. Mouth closed, eyes shut. But there was a crack down the center of the forehead, like it had split or like something had tried to get out. I set it aside. The envelope was thick, old paper, tied shut with a string. The handwriting on the front read, "To me from me. Final draft." I untied it slowly, hands shaking. Inside were 7 pages, folded carefully. The top was marked, "Confession, to be read before signing." The first sentence made me feel like my stomach had dropped into the floor. If you are reading this, Elias, then I failed, and that means you still have a chance. I kept reading, line after line. This thing, the box, the ledger. The time, it is not linear. It loops. It learns. It resets every time we try to escape it. We build it stronger. It needs a signature, a willful act of debt. Once someone signs another's name, even in mercy it begins. I tried to break the loop 5 years ago. I burned the ledger. I destroyed the shelf. I even tried to bury the box in a mine shaft off Route 49. It came back. You will try to protect Abigail. You should, but you must understand the only way to stop this is to close the box from the inside. Not physically. Spiritually. You must be the one who signs and accepts and seals it. The ledger is not the final record. You are. I felt the walls press inward, like the air itself was folding. Abigail stepped forward. "What is it?" I handed her the letter. She read silently, eyes scanning, jaw clenching tighter with each paragraph. She looked up. "You wrote this?" "Yes, but you have never." "Not yet, but I will." I picked up the wax mask again, turned it over. There, etched into the underside, was a date, March 20th, 2030, 5 years from now. Abigail crouched beside the box. There is something under the padding. We peeled back the lining. Underneath was a second ledger smaller, leather-bound, water-damaged. She opened it. Page after page. Names were scrawled in frantic ink. Each name had a date. Each date had a time. 2:37 a.m. And beside each one, a single word. Signed. Denied. Traded. I flipped to the final page. There was one entry left. Blank. Except for the printed header. Name. Date of death. Time of death. 2:37 a.m. Method. A pen was tucked into the spine. My pen. The one from my office. The one I lost last week. Abigail closed the book. "We need to end this." I looked at her. "How?" "We write the name, but we choose who it belongs to. If this is a contract, then we end it by signing it honestly." I shook my head. "It wants a trade. Then we do not trade. We acknowledge." I took the pen, uncapped it. The box hummed. The air grew dense. I wrote slowly. Name, Elias James Crowe. Date of death, February 27, 25. Time, 2:37 a.m. Method, acceptance. The ink shimmered, then bled into the page, not smudged, not absorbed, devoured. The lights in cold room B flickered violently. The box shuddered. The ledger snapped shut on its own. And for the first time since this began, I heard nothing. Not a knock, not a whisper, just silence. We stood there, breathless. Abigail turned to me. "Is it over?" I do not know, but deep down, I felt something shift. Not an ending, but a settling. A weight returned to where it belonged. I closed box 731, sealed it with new tape. No label, no return address, no signature. Just a single word on the lid, in black marker. Paid. I could not bury the box here. Not in Cold Room B. Not in the ground behind the chapel. Not under concrete or steel or salt. It had to go back. Back to where it started. Back to where I made the first mistake. The sun had not risen yet when I drove north. The roads were slick with frost. The pine trees leaned over the asphalt like witnesses bowing their heads. Abigail sat beside me, silent. She held the smaller ledger in her lap, the one with all the names. We had not opened it since last night. In the back seat, box 731 was strapped in with a seatbelt. It did not move. It did not hum. It just waited. We pulled into the ruins of Saints, Dominic's chapel, at exactly 5:34 a.m. It had burned down in 1987, long before either of us were born. But the stone steps still stood, and beneath them, the old basement vault, once a place for relics and scrolls, now nothing but ash and earth and shadow. Pastor Henry Bell had once told me, that box does not belong to any church. It predates faith. But a chapel is a wound in the world where the rules bleed thinner. That is where it came through. That is where it must go back. We hauled it down the steps. The air was heavy. No wind, no sound, just the sound of gravel under boots and the faint click of Abigail's flashlight as she panned the dark. There was an old stone table at the center of the vault. We set the box on top. I opened the ledger one last time. The page was blank. No name. No ink. Just a cold, expectant silence. I took the pen from my coat. Abigail watched me. "You are sure?" I nodded. "I am not trading anymore. Not hiding. Not cheating. I am signing me." I bent over the page, and I wrote, name, Elias James Crowe. Date of death, February 27th, 2025. Time of death, 2:37 a.m. Method, confession. As soon as I finished the final stroke, the ink shimmered, then sank. Not absorbed, devoured. The paper turned dark around the edges, like it had burned from within. I closed the ledger, set it on the lid of the box, then took out the original letter, the one marked "To Me Final Draft," folded it, placed it beside the book, and I whispered, "This is yours now." The room shook, just slightly. Dust fell from the cracks above, but there was no voice, no knock, no scream. Just the faint sound of stone settling into stone like a lock turning. We climbed the steps in silence. At the top, I looked back. The box was gone. The table was empty. So was the space it had taken inside me for over a decade. Outside, dawn broke over the hills. The sky did not care what we had done, but I did. I looked at Abigail. She smiled, barely. "Ledger's closed," she said. "Not yet," I replied. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out a new journal, blank, leather-bound. I handed it to her. Her name was embossed on the front, Abigail Crowe, Mortician. "I will not be here forever," I said, "but someone needs to keep records. The right way." She held it like it was fragile, then nodded. We drove home. No words. No ghosts. Just the sound of tires on frozen road. And for the first time in 26 years, I felt clean. It has been 5 days. No knock. No glitch. No ink on paper that I did not write. Cold Room B is quiet again. Shelf 3 remains locked. The ledger is gone. Abigail started her new shift full-time yesterday. She wears her lab coat a little differently now, less like armor, more like uniform. She cataloged every name in the secondary ledger we recovered, not as supernatural oddities, but as ethical failures in the system, miscalculated paperwork, broken chains of custody, forgotten people. Ghosts, she told me, are not the problem. Bureaucracy is. I could not have said it better. The funeral home is quieter now. There is a kind of stillness here I have not felt in years. Not silence. Peace. For the first time in a long time, I look at my own reflection and see just a man, not a ledger, waiting to be filled. Yesterday, I received a parcel. No return address. No posted. Just a white box. Sitting at the front steps like it had been placed. Not delivered. Inside was a journal. Leather-bound. Identical to the one I gave Abigail. On the cover, in embossed letters, Blackwater Ledger. Vuol. There was no paper inside, just a brass plaque on the inner cover. This is not the end. Just proper filing, and a single line below it. See you at the audit. I burned it. Every page. Watched the leather curl in my backyard furnace. But as the last flame died, I found something in the ash, a wax seal, unbroken, with my initials pressed into the center. Sometimes I still wake at 2:37 a.m., not because I hear knocking, but because I expect to. And maybe that is the point. Maybe the dead do not haunt us to scare us. Maybe they come back to remind us there is always a cost, and if you are not the one to pay it, someone else will.